as the title says, I've been wanting to. Well, I've actually been thinking about addressing this for quite some time because, you know, there's a lot of people here online that subscribe to me here on YouTube that are friends of mine here on YouTube that I've also befriended through sites like Facebook and Twitter. You know, they either follow me on Twitter, they either befriended me on Facebook, or through Facebook and all that. They subscribe to me here on YouTube and even follow me on places like DeviantArt and all that. You see, there's one thing, and I'm making some coffee here right now to wake me up because I'm going to go get my second dose of the Mandira shot today, the COVID shot, so I'll be completely vaccinated. Um, but basically, long story short, I just wanted to finally address this because someone on here on the tube and on Facebook that's been very kind to people like me and Patrick Butler of PB Productions and Zara Nizarak of Multimedia Chronicles and all that and many others by sending us, various movies and items, when we least expect it. That of course being Frank Hill, It's Frank. And Frank has been always curious about things, and I'm sure he's not the only one. I mean, I've seen sometimes people would comment on my channel, they would comment on some of my videos where I've mentioned this. And basically, it's just something that I finally decided to, kind of get off my chest, if you will. Now, as a lot of you know, as I've mentioned many times, I live with my mom. And I have no problem with that because there's a lot of us out there that live with our parents. And the reason we live with our parents or any member of our family is because financially it's a lot easier for us. Whether it's by owning a house or renting a house, it's a lot easier. And especially if both of us have jobs or we have finances coming in of any kind, it helps us out in a huge, huge way. So I have no problem doing that. The thing is, folks, is with my mom, and this goes for any family members that are out there, anybody, not just my mom, not just my dad, not just my sisters or anything like that, but anybody's family out there goes through the same thing. And what they go through is the fact that we have family members that are very, very curious individuals. That is the truth. That is a fact of life. They are a very curious bunch. They always like to know what's going on. Sometimes they want to know what you're doing. And, they have a right to, ask that and have a right to wonder what's going on to make sure nothing, bad is happening, especially with, like I said, with what's been going on in this world. They don't want to take a chance that you might be up to something that might get you in trouble. So of course they're going to want to know what's up. And again, they have all the right to want to ask that and wonder that. And the thing is, that's the same thing with my mom, and it's the same thing with anybody's parents, mothers or fathers. They're always curious about certain things. They're always curious about this. They're always curious about that. And again, they have a right to want to know things, even though sometimes if you live with your parents or you live with any family members and you're old enough to, make your own decisions, then they shouldn't have to, really know what's going on. But here's the thing. That's not entirely the case. That's not entirely true because as long as you live under the same roof as they do and you help them out financially like they help you out financially and all that, then in a way they kind of have all the right in the world to want to know what's going on. They'll kind of have all the right to be curious as to what you're spending your money on or what you're watching and stuff like that. And yeah, it can be a little annoying, but it's just something you have to deal with. For me, when people told me, "Oh, you're gonna give up your independence to go back there, and you're gonna give up your privacy," I knew what I was getting into. I knew what I was getting into. My mom, in a way, she knew what she was getting into. And you know what? It's the same thing with any parents that have the kids move back in with them. Even the kids that move in back, even with the kids that move back in with them with their own families. That is the truth. You know, people have moved back in with their parents, and they've moved back in with their parents along with their own family, their own wife and kids, or their own husband and kids. They've done that. So it's nothing really new. And of course, when even an entire family, when you bring your whole family to move in, with your parents, or in this case for your kids, their grandparents, then those parents are going to have just as much right to know what's going on than anybody else. And I can tell you that from experience. Because back in the early 90s, me and my family lived with my grandparents. And here's the thing, as much as it may have been, well, it wasn't, I'll put it this way, it wasn't an inconvenience, and all that. It was not an inconvenience, but it took a lot of getting used to. It took a lot of getting used to and adjusting, because there were times that my grandparents would want to know what we were doing. They would want to know what we were doing. And that was it. They'd want to know what we were doing. Yes, did they entrust a house to us when they would go, to Lake Comanche, along with some of the grandkids for about a week or two? Absolutely, they would trust the house to us. Would they help us out when we needed help? Absolutely, they would help us out. There's no doubt about that. But here's the thing. There were at times that they were always curious about what me and my sisters were doing, what my mom and dad were doing. What was going on here, what was going on there. They were always curious about those things. And they had a right to be, even though we were paying, my mom was paying them rent. They had all the right to know what was going on. And that's the thing you have to deal with. Whether you pay rent or you don't, you're always, and you live with your family, and you live with your parents, whether it's on your own or with your family, your wife or your husband, and your kids. You got to face the facts that, they'll respect your privacy, but there will be times that they'll be curious. That curiosity will get the best of them, and they're going to want to know what you're doing. They're going to want to know what you're ordering and having delivered to the house. They're going to want to know what you're watching. And unfortunately, the truth and the fact of the matter is this, the realism is this. They have the right to do that. They have the right to do that. There's no doubt about it. Even if you're a kid, growing up, and you get to that age of 18 years old, You get to that age of 18 years old, and you're at that age of having your own independence and everything, but you yet still live with your parents? Even though you have your independence, as long as you still live under their house, they have all the right to be curious as to what you're doing. They have all the right to wonder what you're doing in your room. They have all the right to know, in a sense, what you're watching or what you're listening to or what you're smoking and stuff like that. They have that right. Even though you are a full-grown adult now, because you hit that age range, they have that right. They have that right. And to some, that may not be the best news to hear, but guess what? Sometimes sometimes you just have to roll, you have to just roll with the dice, you have to roll with the dice of fate that was dealt with you. I mean, it's like my mom says, and this is true, because everybody says this, that God has a plan for all of us. He has a reason for things happening the way they do. You know, did we expect my grandfather to pass away on my birthday, which triggered my mind and my decision to get a job, excuse me, to move back out here? You know, did we expect that to happen? No, but it happened. And it happened because God allowed it to happen because he basically knew that it would be the last time my grandfather was going to see me, and that it would be the trigger. It would be the fire that needed to be lit within me to get me home. That's what he knew. That's what he knew, and that's why he did it. That's why he allowed my grandfather to go home on my birthday. Because he knew that would trigger the fire in me. It would lit the fire in me to make the number one goal in life. That number one goal in life, to come back over a year later and come back on a permanent basis. God has a reason for a lot of things happening. Whether we agree with his decisions or not, he has a reasoning because it's all part of his almighty plan. And that even includes living with family that is curious about what you do, what you watch, even what you spend and get delivered to the house and stuff. And that brings me to this situation here. It brings me to the situation here, and I know I'm about 12 minutes in, so I do apologize if it took this long to get to the point, but that's what brings me here. You see, Frank Hill, Patrick Butler, Ignacio Hernandez, Zara Nizrak, everybody that communicates with me and even comments on my channels, on my channel as well as my videos, they're always curious as to why. What's the big deal about, you getting certain things that ultimately you have to toss away or is questionable. Because again, it ties into what I said. My mom has the right to know. But my mom is also a huge and a very, very good prayer warrior. Anytime family needs prayer for healing, she will pray with them. Anytime a friend needs prayer for whatever they're going through in life, she prays with them. That's what she does. That's what she does. And she's been a prayer warrior since 1972. Yes, has she, like any prayer warrior out there, male or female, child or adolescent, teen or young adult, has she fallen to the wayside at times? Yeah. But guess what? Just like all of us, just like them, she's risen back up. She rose back up because God forgave her for the sins that she fell astray to. The point that I'm getting at is she's the kind of person that no matter how much you try to hide something, she will find out. No matter how much you try to hide something, she will find out. I'll give you a good example. And I talked about this, okay? I talked about this. And I mentioned this in a message to Frank recently this morning. I told him that back when we were younger, my father used to have a skeleton mask, a rubber skeleton mask that he would put over his head, and then he would put on a dark hoodie during Halloween and wear it while we would go out trick-or-treating. Me, my sisters, and my cousins, we would go out trick-or-treating, and he would be one of the adults to accompany us when we were walking down the various streets located around Thomas Avenue in Hayward, California. And my mom hated that mask. And for a time, she didn't do anything because she loved my father. She loved him and respected that this was his thing, that he only wore once a year, and that was it. But one day she told me that she woke up because she had a nightmare. And it was a nightmare of that skeleton mask, a skull coming after her, chasing her. So she got up from the bed, looked under the bed, and lo and behold, there was the mask. My dad's mask. And what did she do? She threw it out. Yeah, my dad wasn't happy about it, but he understood later on that, okay. Because once my mom explained to him what happened, even though he's stubborn, and still is at times, even though he's stubborn, he understood when she explained to him what happened. He understood and respected that decision, even though she did it without consulting him. He later on understood and respected it. Now, here's the thing. What does this have to do with, let's say, somebody sending me the Dungeons and Dragons complete series? What does this have to do with Harry Potter? Well, it's crazy as this sounds when it comes to Dungeons and Dragons. It all comes off based of a report. It all comes based off a report. You see, years ago, many years ago, as a matter of fact, over 30-something years, nearly 40 years ago, I would say 35 plus years ago, as a matter of fact, but around the early to mid 80s, the late early 80s to the early mid 80s, there was a report that came around about strange happenings occurring in homes that housed the Dungeons and Dragons game. Strange things happening that seemed supernatural. They seemed unexplainable. As a matter of fact, there was one report that came out. There was one report, that came out. Just checking my dog there. But like I said, there was one report that came out stating that a mother one day thought she saw something. She thought she saw something unnatural, inhuman, if you will. Something that just appeared out of nowhere. Very dynamic, very demonic-like, if you will. And it just disappeared. It was like it was right in the corner, and it disappeared. And that was not the only story that got reported because of that. And that was on various news outlets. It wasn't the only story. Other stories started to pop up of similar experiences. And here's the thing. When my mom heard about this, that's when she made it clear to my dad. She made it clear to my sisters. And she even made it clear to me that she did not want that stuff in the house. She didn't. She did not want that stuff in the house. But guess what? And guess what? And you know what happened? That's what I'm trying to say. It's early, I do apologize. And you know what happened? Dungeons and Dragons, or anything like it, Dungeons and Dragons related, was not brought into the house. Heck, even my sisters' families would not allow it to happen. And this was at a time when the cartoon was on. And I think my sisters and I were watching it, as well as my cousins. But as soon as those reports came out, folks, that's when we stopped watching it. Because as soon as it came on, our mom would change the channel. Our mom's sisters would change the channels on their kids. And various other parents would do the same thing. All because of that report. All because of what was being reported, the stories being told of things happening. And D&D lost a lot of steam at that time. Yes, it's grown back in popularity throughout the past 10, 15, 20 years. There's no doubt about it. It has grown in popularity, folks. But the thing is still, despite it growing in popularity and despite the fact that Hasbro and those behind it are trying their best to try to wipe away that reputation that tainted it back in the 80s, there are still going to be folks, there are still going to be families, even to this day, whether you are grown up and you are living with that family, with your parents, whether you are grown up and you have kids and a wife or husband of your own and you live with your parents, guess what? Even though Hasbro and those behind Dungeons and Dragons are doing their best to try to, fix that reputation that tainted it. They're trying to fix that reputation that tainted it years ago. Guess what? Those folks that, that basically rebuked D&D at that time still do so today. I mean, for example, I know for example, someone like Josh Scorcher, aka Firebrand, and Dr. Wolf, they are Christian bronies. They are born again Christian bronies. And I respect that. I respect that about them. They are born again Christian bronies, but guess what? And guess what I should say? They play D&D, but here's what they probably do. Here's what I think they do, because they do probably the same thing I do. I have the various Mortal Kombat games, alright? Various Mortal Kombat games. And guess what I do? When I got Mortal Kombat 10, I think, I prayed over it, nothing has happened. My mom prays every morning before she goes to work. She prays every morning when she's off. So the power of the Lord is in this house. So even if I had things, in here that might seem to be in that category, nothing happens. Nothing happens whatsoever. Nothing happens. Nothing happens whatsoever. And here's the other thing too that I think, kind of puts my mom in that situation to where, she doesn't say much about, let's say, MK or Smurfs or He-Man or She-Ra or whatever. Here's what makes those different. She's never heard of controversy. She's never heard of anything of any kind. She's never heard of anything of any kind, if you will, when it comes to that. She's not heard anything. Not once. Not once has she heard any controversy. Not once has she heard any stories, similar, if not identical, to what she heard about with Dungeons and Dragons. Or some of the stories that get told about Harry Potter that seem similar and in that category. She doesn't hear it when it comes to things like Smurfs. She doesn't hear it when it comes to things like He-Man and She-Ra. She doesn't hear it when it comes to Mortal Kombat. And I know that sounds strange to hear for a lot of people, but it's a fact. It is a fact that all because they don't have those reputations, if you will, that kind of opens the door for those kind of things to be allowed. I think that's the reason. And it's also because I think as well that, they include, especially like with Mortal Kombat, they include third-party characters like Rambo and Terminator and RoboCop. Characters that, even though they've had R-rated movies behind them, have seemed more, less horror-wise and more, you know, acceptable. Like there's no controversy with them, if you know what I mean. And that's what it stems from, guys. That's what it stems from. And look, as far as something like Onward goes, she loves Onward. She saw it. Heck, she even wondered, hey, what's this Onward movie? It's a Pixar, right? It's Disney, right? It's on Disney Plus. I said, yeah. She said, oh, good. I'll probably watch it. She has no problem with it. She has no problem with it whatsoever. The thing is, it's all about the reputation. If you go back and you Google, the history, the controversial history of Dungeons and Dragons, and even Harry Potter, and even the Ouija board, whatever you want to call it, you'll see some stories pop up from news media outlets throughout the decades talking about stories of people seeing things that were not natural, that were inhuman, if you know what I mean. So, to me, from what I'm seeing, because I live with my mom, and it's the same with anybody else out there that lives with their parents. Whether they have their family living with their parents along with them or on their own. And their parents have that same belief, and same disdain for things like D&D and Harry Potter, despite so much effort to try to clean them up and make them more acceptable and try to wipe away those, controversial stains that, were put on them. The thing is, despite all those efforts, you know, despite all those efforts, once you have a disdain and a rebukeness towards something that you feel is not right and should not even exist, you're going to keep that belief for the rest of your life. And that's the truth. But anyway, though, guys, I wanted to come on here and finally address this and hopefully, get it off my chest. If there was any lag with this, I do apologize. I'm using my phone. But yeah, I just wanted to come on here, get this off my chest finally, because I know, like I said, people like Patrick Butler, Zara Nizarak, Frank Hill, Ignacio Hernandez, and many others that have commented on my channel, on some of my videos when I've talked about this. I know they've all been wondering why, what's going on, what's the problem. Well, hopefully this video kind of explains that, And here's the thing as well, when it comes to, packages being sent between people, again, Frank Hill is one of the best. And me, along with Patrick Butler and others, appreciate what he does. And here's the deal. Like I said, my mom is a very inquisitive person. I told him this in the message. I said she's a very inquisitive person. She likes to ask questions and she hopefully gets some answers, to those questions. She likes to ask questions to hopefully get some answers to them. She's always curious and inquisitive because she wants to know things. She wants to learn. Or she's just curious. She's been like that her whole life. She's even told me that. So yeah, it's just something that, I got to deal with. And here's the thing. It's not just what someone like Frank or Ignacio Hernandez or anybody else sends me. It could be things I order off Amazon. It could be things I order off Amazon, eBay, from China, from wherever. Even MLB, she's always going to be curious about them. She's always going to wonder, okay, what's this? What's that? Oh, what did you order this time? She's going to be like that. And guess what? Again, she's not the only one that's like that. There are family members that are the same way. Like I mentioned earlier, my grandparents had the right to wonder that when we lived with them. And it's the same today. But anyway, though, I just want to, again, guys, get this off my chest. Let you know, why certain things are the way they are, and hopefully this will finally settle things. And I hope I didn't cause any trouble or controversy or anything like that, guys. So thank you all for watching live on this Wednesday morning, early. Let me know what your thoughts are in the description, in the comments down below. Have a good rest of your Wednesday, guys. I'm gonna get myself ready and prepared to leave in just a few hours to go get my second and final Mandora shot, if you will, to be fully vaccinated. And I will talk to y'all later. So till next time, guys. God bless. Take care. I'm out. Come on, Cleo. Come on. Good girl.